What is up, everybody, and welcome to another in our series for AMD teaching you about building a PC in every single category. Today we tackle Micro ATX. That's right, we've done Mini ATX, we've done ATX and eATX, and today we're going to be doing a Micro ATX build. Now, the one thing I really like about this build, and we wanted one of these in the series to be just kind of a no-frills, great starter PC. Love the case. This is an easy build to do in. This isn't going to be a showcase build, and all in all, we give you some room for upgrade ability and all that sort of stuff. So remember, this is kind of a longer video, so use all the links down below to kind of jump forward and move back and forth as you see fit. We try to make these as universal as possible. The only thing we're not ever able to make universal is things like installing, of course, an AMD CPU and also installing the AIO. Those are going to be unique to this video. But in every other case, like if you want to switch out like your RAM or your M.2 or maybe even your motherboard, you have those options by the way we show you just how to connect things universally. Anyway, guys, let's go ahead and get started, and let's talk about the parts we chose for this particular build. So like I said, when I talked about this a little bit earlier in my great introduction that probably blew your minds, that this is kind of a no-frills build. There's no RGB. It's all in all, there's room for upgradability, but this is like an amazingly just great starter PC. So starting with our motherboard, because this is Micro ATX, of course we have to use a Micro ATX motherboard. We're using the Tough Gaming B550M+. For our CPU, we've got the Ryzen 5 5600X. We're using Alloy 3600 megahertz 2x16, so 32 gigs of RAM. For our power supply, we've got a 750 watt EVGA G5. For our GPU, we're using the AMD Radeon Sapphire 6700 XT. Great GPU. For storage, we're going to use one 500 gig SN550 and then a single 1 terabyte SN550. Again, you've got fast M.2 storage access, plus you've got both the ability to have a dedicated OS drive and a dedicated application drive, minimizing your slowdown should you fill up the drives. And then finally, for cooling, we're going to be using the Phanteks Glacier 1 240MP. All of these parts are interchangeable. Again, if you want to change the motherboard, if you want to change the RAM, if you want to change the GPU, if you want to change the M.2, or if you want to change the PSU, those things are options here. Again, the one things that are going to be specific to this are going to be the Phanteks AIO, and of course, installing the CPU. And then finally, for the case, absolutely love this case. This is from Phanteks. This is the Phanteks Enthoo Evolve M.ATX. This is part of their Evolve line of cases. All in all, great case to build in, nice and easy to build in, and also comes with really great starter fans, so we don't have to replace anything there. So again, trying to make this simple for you and easy to follow along. Anyway, let's talk about what you need for the build next. Let's talk about the tools that we need to build a PC. First and foremost, you need something like a nice big clean area like what I have here. You can use a mod mat like these, which you can pick up on Newegg. If you do it on a kitchen table or just a nice big open area, that's okay. You try and do it not on carpet. Again, it's just to protect from static, ideally like a nice hardwood floor, kitchen floor. If you are gonna do it on carpet, just be extra safe about static discharge. When we talk about the tools that you need, there's a couple things. Down here on the left-hand side, we have some screwdriver options. I will tell you, just having a standard screwdriver on hand, some cases require or have like small areas that only a standard screwdriver would fit in, so it's always good to have one of these on hand. We also have options like, for instance, things like wow sticks, or in this case, iFixit kits that make things a little easier for some of the smaller components. And so depending on how serious you are about building, these are always good options. These right here are zip ties, which I always like to use, and these are really for cable management. You also have the option of what are called Velcro ties, which you have right here. I always have a knife on hand. You don't always have a branded knife like I do, but you know, branded knives are always a good thing. This right here is thermal paste and a thermal paste spreader. The AIO we're going to use comes with thermal paste pre-applied, but should you need to remove it or make a mistake, having some of this on hand is nice. The cool thing about a thermal paste spreader is you get a nice even spread over the entire IHS, which is just better for heat dissipation if you want to do that. This right here is for cutting our zip ties, so having something like this to be able to cut the extra off. You can also use scissors, but a little tool like this, which you can get at like Home Depot or any hardware store, is really good. Finally, we have our isopropyl alcohol and our paper towels. Like I said, if you should make a mistake and you need to reapply thermal paste, you need to remove that thermal paste using your paper towels or your alcohol in order to make that better. So this should be everything you should need if you want to do an ideal kind of build. Again, you really can just get by with a screwdriver and a pair of scissors if you really wanted to. So those are all the tools that you need. Now, guess what? We can get started building the PC. So let's talk about the things that you're going to need out of the motherboard box before you go ahead and build your PC. So very simply, obviously, you'll need your motherboard. This is our ASUS TUF Gaming B550M+. We will need this. This is called an IO shield. We'll show you how to install this a little bit later on, but you'll definitely need this as well. In fact, it goes in that direction. You'll also need your M.2 screws, which we're going to be using 2 M.2s, so you'll have to use both of these. And then lastly, and we say this in every single build, you want to make sure that you have your motherboard manual ready. Anyway, let's do a quick tour of this motherboard, and then we'll get started building. So we're in the top left, we've got our EPS CPU power connector. The EPS CPU power connector is what powers this socket and then all of this section right here. Over here, we've got probably the most important connection. This is your RGB. And we know that RGB makes everything faster. This is a 12-volt addressable RGB, which is probably one of the least frequently used. Next to us, you've got 2 fan headers. The one that's right here, the light gray one, that's actually the one that we're gonna have to plug something into. That's your CPU fan header. That's the only one that if you don't connect something to it, it will actually throw an error. You'll see some other fan headers throughout here, but that's the one that's the most critical on here. This is where we're gonna stick our RAM. It's dual channel. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we go along. This is your 24-pin ATX. This pretty much powers the rest of your motherboard right here. Over here, we've got a USB 3 connection, the worst one on the planet. Down here, we've got our SATA connections. This is where we're going to do things like external hard drives, 2.5-inch drives, 3.5-inch drives, all that stuff plugs into here. We're not doing anything there today, but that's where this was. This is where things get a little bit weird because in some motherboards, this is our front panel connections. Some of those kings, in many cases, they're going to be over here, but again, this is where your motherboard manual is going to come in handy. You've got USB 2, another fan header. Your other super critical RGB headers, this one's a little different. This is a 5-volt addressable RGB. And then finally over here is your HD audio, which does all your audio connections and all that sort of stuff. Up here in the middle, this is your socket. This is AMD specific. You can't put an Intel in here, so this is for AMD, specifically for Ryzen. If you're not doing a Ryzen build and you're not doing and you're trying to do either one of the other builds, this is not gonna work. So this may not be useful for you. And then finally over here, the final part is you've got your IO, which is like all your connections and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, there's your motherboard. Let's go ahead and start installing parts. Okay, so installing our CPU right here in the center. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take this to 90 degrees, just like that. Grabbing it on the sides, so you're not touching the pins or anything like that. There's a little arrow on the top left corner that lines up with the little arrow right here at the top, like so. Pop it in, wiggle it just a little bit, then bring this down, and boom. Congratulations, you now have a CPU installed. Okay, so next up, we're gonna install our RAM. That's gonna go in this section up here. Now, remember to check your motherboard manual because if you're only installing 2 DIMMs, it is very specific where you have to install those to activate dual channel and to have their best speed and capabilities. In this case, for ours, it's A2 and B2. In 99% of cases, this is going to be true. You'll see a little slot in the PCB. You're gonna line that little slot with this little like mark in the center. Just go ahead and pop it in just like this, like that, and boom, there you go. Nice solid click. That was a good click. Let me just say quality click. And same thing with this one right here. Line it up like that, and then boom. There we go. RAM is installed. Let's get on to our M.2s. Okay, so next up we have our M.2 installation. What you're gonna see here is you're gonna see, we're gonna go ahead and remove all of the shields. The first one doesn't need one, but sometimes your M.2s can be hidden underneath these essentially heat. They dissipate heat. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take off this one right here. And you can see now we've got both M.2 slots viewable. Because we're doing these in 2280, we've got the standoffs we've got to use, and those 2280 is the millimeter length of the M.2 that we're going to be using, and 99% of them are always this long. So what we're going to do is just going to grab our little screw. You see there's a little slot in the PCB. We're just going to pop it in just like that. It's going to click. There you go. It's nice and in. Same thing with the bottom one. What you're going to do is you're going to take your super tiny screws and put them up just like that. There we go. Now I got our 2 WD blues installed. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and peel this. This is basically activating our thermal pad. And remember, if you end up upgrading your M.2, it's okay. It's okay to take this off. Like the thermal pad will not stick. And even if it does, just take it off and reapply it. It's just to make sure that heat transfers between the M.2 to this top part right here. I'm just going to screw it in. And there you go. Now your M.2 is installed. Next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be installing the bracket for our AIO. Inside of your AIO, if you're using the same one we're using, is a bag that looks just like this. It has a little thing that says AM4. You're going to want to take that bag outside of the box of the AIO. You want to grab these right here. And so these are very specific. Then what we're going to do now is we're going to take our screwdriver and we're going to remove these 4 screws. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take out these. Basically, they go just over these covers like this, and you just screw it down until it's tight, just like that. Now, our motherboard is ready, and we can go ahead and prep our case. Okay, so here is our Fantex M.2 Evolve M.ATX case. Inside, you'll find this accessories box. One thing that's really nice about these is that the accessories are actually sorted by what you actually need. So you'll need this screw box. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and strip the case. So we're gonna go ahead and pull this off like that. And it just slips up just like this. Other side, same thing. Just open it up like a Lamborghini, push up, and then the pops off just like so. Then in the back is a little screw. Do is undo that screw, drop it. That'll take this part off. You just slide backwards and pull up. This part just pops right off. Don't worry, you can't pull it. It's made of metal. It's good for defending yourself if you want to. And then we're going to take the dust filter off. Now that we're going to replace the fans, it's just a lot. We're just trying to make the case. All you do for the dust filter is again pull off. Just trying to make the case as light as possible as you work in it. Now let's get our motherboard installed. So what we're going to do now is first thing we always install is called the IO shield. So here we have our IO shield. Right here, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go down to the side just like this, then push on all 4 corners until you see a nice snap. It'll take a little bit of patience, but make sure that you get a good solid snap all the way around. Motherboard just pops in just like this. What you're doing over here is you're just making sure that none of the stuff is popping out or covering on any of the holes or slots here. So this is your Fantex Boxo screws, which I always love having these things, they're so good. What you're gonna do is pop this open, and then right here in the center, these are your motherboard screws. You're just gonna take them from this tray. They look like they have like a little like flat bit around the edge, so that's how you know you're using the right screws. So let's go ahead and get these installed. There, now all of our stuff is installed. We're gonna do something a little bit different. So what we're using here is a cable extension. Again, showing these here. These are optional accessories. They just overall make your build look better. The one that you're gonna grab, if you're using the same ones you are using, is the Asia Horse. They look like this, and what we're gonna do, we're going to apply a single cable comb. You're gonna turn this over like so. So the teeth are down, and you're going to pop this on each one of these real quick. So that looks like this. Now, if you're not going to be using cable extensions, then you're going to want to grab this from in your power supply. It's literally labeled CPU. It does split. There's no cable comb. You can see why I use these. Again, this is a much prettier looking cable than this one. Now they both install the same way, so you can follow these steps after, the same from here. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your cable and plug this in right up here like this. The reason we're doing this is that with our AIO, sometimes it makes it a little harder, so we're just gonna pre-install this, so when we install our AIO, we don't have to try and get weird for getting our fingers. And then you're just gonna pull that through just like that. And there you go, now you've got your cable installed. Okay, so let's go through real quick what you're gonna need out of your AIO box when you install your AIO. First and foremost, you'll need your pump and your reservoir combo. You'll need your 2 fans. Inside of that, these are actually combs to control your tubes. So these are optional, but I like to use them. You'll need this bag of hardware, which actually has the little screws that hold the pump to the CPU. You'll need your AM4 bracket. These are your hardware for installing your fans. You'll need all of this. This is your RGB. This allows you to push the fan header to the back, and then this splits so you can plug both fans in. And then this is the front plate for your pump. This is all the stuff you'll need. Let's go ahead and get it built. So placing your pump and your pump off to the right-hand side like this. Take your fans with the cable pushing towards the front like this. There you go. Then if you want to, it's up to you, but go ahead and take your cable and go ahead and plug this in just like that. So there you go. Now these two fans are daisy chained together, which is good. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take out your bag of hardware, put this out, and then you're gonna take your long screws and starting in the corners, go ahead and screw your fans down. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your extension that came with your AIO. You're gonna take that and plug that into this one. And now your AIO is ready to connect. So we're gonna put all screws and washers together real quick. Go ahead and take your AIO like so, with making sure the fan cables are in the back like this. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take your one cable here, you're gonna run it through the back like so, and then as you're pulling it, it's gonna pull the AIO until it's up in the mount, up in the top mount like this. And then you're gonna put one screw in the two corners, and that'll hold it in place. We're gonna go and take this and untwisty tie this. This is your rear exhaust fan. We're gonna do something unique right here. There's a gap in this heat shield. What we're gonna do is we're gonna push this down like this, and you're gonna run your cable down through this little heat shield. And once you've got it down this little heat shield, you're gonna take your connector and connect it right here to this fan extension right here. So there you go. So you've got that little cable. And then we'll pull the rest of this taut right here and pull it through the back up here. Okay, so next up we're gonna install our pump. The things we'll need for this is our bracket, and then we'll need our 4 basically connectors. Knowing this goes like this. So notice how the fan text is right way up like so. You're going to take this and flip it over, rotate to the left and take off. You're going to take the next bracket, set it down and rotate to the right. You know you've done it correctly when you turn it over, and again, the fan text is the same order, and then the brackets are on the right corner. So you're just going to set it over the holes just like that and set it all the way down. Then holding it down in each corner, go ahead and start screwing in your larger thumb screws. And these should just go on pretty easily. What you can do is take your screwdriver and then just starting counterclockwise, tighten them all the way. So going opposite directions, just like that. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to grab this right here. You're going to install this into the CPU right here. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your splitter that looks like this. You're gonna install that in at the same fan slot right above. Just like that. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna run both of those through this slot in the top. Just like that. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna install our shield, because this actually has a cable that goes with it. Just magnetic, so just make sure that you give that lots of room. Then you're just gonna kind of move the wires so they move around. It just pops out just like that, and then that'll kind of control the wires. And then we're gonna take this, and we're gonna run that through the same slot we ran the other ones. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab one of our zip ties. We're gonna zip tie all of this stuff right here together. Okay, so next thing we're gonna do is we're basically gonna get all of our cabling connected and ready for front panel. The only other thing you're gonna need for this is you're gonna need, out of your AIO box, a cable that looks like this. This is so we can plug our RGB and control our RGB for our AIO. There is one connection here that comes with the case. You do not have to worry about this. We're not gonna be playing with it at anything at all. So when you get done, you're like, what is that for? It's actually for controlling other Fantex RGB stuff and for the LED at the front, but because we don't have any of that stuff and there's no way to change the RGB color, we're not connecting that up. First thing we're gonna do is let's get our fans hooked up. This one is connected to our AIO. So that's gonna go just like that. And then we're gonna grab our untwisty tie this one. This is for the fan that's in the front. We're gonna plug this one right here. And we'll do some cable management after we hook up all our front panels. We're gonna put all of our stuff in place for our front panel connectors. So this is our HD audio. That's gonna go in this slot right here. Then we've got our USB 3, which we're actually gonna pull out of here because it is gonna go, we're gonna pull out of this one too. We'll hook these up and use these later. This is gonna go right in here, like that. And then you're gonna take, these are your front panel connections. So you've got one, which is your power switch. And then you've got your second one, which is your hard drive switch. And these are both gonna go in this slot right here, like this. Just push them all the way down. And finally, we're gonna take our RGB one. You're gonna take this one end, and down at the end, you'll see a connection that this will go into. You're gonna plug that in just like so, just like that. You're gonna take your RGB connection, and you're gonna run it right here. This is our USB 3.2. This just goes right over here, like so. Remember, 90-degree angle when you install that, and then just kind of push as much of that excess cable out of the way as you humanly can. Next thing we got is our front panel connections. In this one, we've got power switch, and we've got hard drive. So power switch is gonna go in the top, the right, like so. And you're gonna do hard drive down below, like this. And there you go. Now you have all your front panels connected. We've got our RGB. There's a 3-pin right here in the front. You're just gonna basically place this and install it just like that. This is gonna be a little finicky. You just wanna go straight down on it, and it'll go in just like that. And finally, our HD audio, which is only keyed one way. It's gonna go in the far left corner, just like that. All of our stuff in the front is ready to go. We're gonna turn this over and let's go ahead and get started with cable management. Dun, dun, dun! Don't worry, we'll get this cleaned up. Once I get this finished, we're gonna go to a quick time lapse. Once I get this finished, I'll kind of talk about how I got the cables to be all cleaned and look nice. What I'm just trying to do is get this into a single channel, which I've done. One thing is like down here at the bottom, you'll notice I didn't pull this too tight. You don't want to crimp cables in this case. All I'm doing is just getting it up so it makes it easy to install my PSU, but again, easy to kind of channel. Everything's kind of in one location, and then just looking down. So very, very clean looking overall. I mean, if you really wanted to, and I'll just tell you this, the more zip ties, you can zip tie this all the way through and make it look like a giant, super clean loop. Again, that just depends on if you want to do any work or upgrades. You're going to be spending a lot of time cutting cable ties. So that is good. We're good here. What we're going to do is go ahead and turn this over, and let's get our GPU installed. So for GPU installation, put your screw at an angle, screwdriver an angle to get this out. We're going to remove this one and the one below it. So these are the two that you're going to basically be removing. And sometimes having a fat screwdriver can be a little bit more difficult just because of the angle. It's just one of the challenges of this particular case. So here's our Radeon 6700 XT. What we're gonna do is just take this, and again, just lining it up. It pops down just like that. There you go, nice and clean in. Then we're gonna take our same screws. And again, remember, don't forget it's gotta click that little, make sure that this clicks into that little slot. Then pushing it a little bit over, screw your tightening screws in. This will keep it from sagging. Next up, let's grab our cable extensions. So for cable extensions, I've got mine pre-applied here. We got those just kind of ready, but again, what I do is I basically test which direction this is gonna go in and then apply the different cable combs. So we've got 3 cable combs installed here. What you're gonna do is you're just gonna take this and install this in the ATX right here in the corner, just like that. Then running it through this spot right here, which you've got a good view of. Like so, and then just make it as tight as possible. Finally, using my thumb, I'm gonna go ahead and remove these screws right here. So once you remove those 2 screws, this little plate will come out just like that. So remove this plate. And then what we're gonna do is take our cable extensions. And depending which one you get, you might have, depending on which Asia Horse cable kit you get, you might end up with one that has a split like this. And then, so we're just gonna put the cable combs on the one and then split this off. If you get certain ones, it only comes with the 3-pin, so you might be good there, but I just wanna show you the option should you do this. Now, if you aren't using cable combs, again, you can use the standard cables like this and just plug these directly in as well, and just skip this step. But again, we're doing this to make the build look good, so that's why we're doing this step. So we're gonna stick this one right here, like that. Take our other one and do the same thing. And then in that hole that we just created, run these in. And then now we can turn this over and install our PSU. The cables we're gonna need for this is we're gonna need the motherboard. Looks just like this. And again, we'll talk about what goes in the PSU. We'll need a single SATA, which is right here, has this kind of connection to it. We'll need a 2 VGA. So you'll know those, they'll look like this, and then they'll have a split 3-pin and 4-pin here at the end. So we'll need 2 of those. Then finally, last step is you'll need a CPU. And the way you'll know the CPU is it basically splits. If you didn't follow and you didn't use extensions, you've already got this plugged in to your PC case like this. So don't worry about this. We'll just plug it in before you stick it in like this. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take our CPU and we're gonna plug that into CPU1. Remember, if you already have it plugged in, you'll do this right before you slide it in. We're gonna grab our VGA. The part that goes in the PSU is the part that does not split off. So we're gonna plug one into VGA1. I'm gonna plug the second one into VGA2, like so. Next step, we're gonna take our SATA. And again, the SATA is pretty easy. It's only one side that can potentially plug in at all. So we're gonna plug this in right here into SATA, like that. And we're gonna take our motherboard, which is the only one that's kind of different. It's the part that's split that plugs into the PSU, and it's actually labeled PSU in this case. Take that, plug it in. Make sure they click all the way in, like so. So you're gonna want 2 of these. They're just gonna make things a little easier. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take one of these and bunch the first one. Again, if you already have your PSU your CPU plugged in, you can do this before you slip it into the case. And this is just to make it a little easier to handle the cables. Okay, so now that we've got that, we're gonna slide it in. And slide it in just like this. There we go. Then sit it up. You're gonna grab 4 PSU screws. They have little hexagons on them. We're gonna grab 4 of those. So we're gonna start right here at the bottom. This one little one that's in the V. Okay, now our PSU is installed. We're gonna put this back down. With SATA, there's only one way you can plug this in. There's a little lip. Just gonna plug that in like that. And just kind of shove little bits of the cable down. Okay, next one we'll do is our CPU, which if you aren't using cable extensions, this is already done. I'm gonna take this one, connect this to the side like this. Just make sure it's got a good solid click. Again, just push that in like that. What I sometimes do is I'll take this off and push it in so it's trapped, and then put this back on. There you go. Then run this, just kind of again shoving this whole thing until it's just at the bottom, down, like so. Next thing what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our motherboard connection, which is gonna go like this. There you go. Same thing, kind of shoving all of our excess cable down into this little gap. So this is nice and flat. And sometimes it helps to push it up a little bit. So it's got a nice little flat place to go, so it's not gonna mess with the door or anything like that. We have our 2 VGA, which the thing that's important here is to make sure that these have lots of movement, right? So that's why I use this, is that again, so we're just gonna plug this one in just like that. We're gonna take our other one, plug it in just like, oh, it'll do 4-pin, that's right. Plug it in just like that. And then same thing, except for I'm gonna shove it into this other area right here. Make sure these have lots of room to move. So the big thing to do is once you're done with that is, again, come over here and check your other cables to make sure that they're through and look good before you close this off. So there we go, our case is done, cable managed. Let's go ahead and put the lid on. Pretty straightforward. Just like that. And boom. This is what you're always testing for, is to see if there's a good place to put this motherboard cable. So this sits flat. There we go. See? Now we can put the rest of the case together. So let's grab our front. We're gonna grab our top. Again, it starts in the back, slides on. Grab our single rear screw, screw it on the back, just like that. And there, now our build is done. Our power, right there, making sure this is in the 0 for now. Plug that into HDMI. And finally, plug that into like that. Then we're gonna flip this on, like so. Then we're gonna push power, and boom. I'm hoping by this point, you're at the same point I am, and you've got a build that's on, that looks good, that's all, lightly lit up and ready to get started. Now, if you're interested, we have a whole video on how to install Windows and get everything set up. You can check that out right here. And I'd love to know, is there something inside of these? These are a little bit shorter than some of our longer ones, but is there something inside of these videos that you feel like we should have added? Was there enough detail in this half hour to help you get a PC set up from beginning to end? Love to know all that down in the comments below. Now, while you're down there, make sure you slap that subscribe button with that like button and ring that notification bell so you get a notification each and every time we have a new video right here on this channel. Now, you can also check out our live shows every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday starting at 5:30 p.m. right there on Twitch or also here on YouTube. Outside of that, guys, I hope this was an absolutely educational experience, that you have a working PC, that you're happy with it, and that you will join us on the next video.